Welcome, everyone, to LCS Academy Week 4, Day 2. We are getting into the nitty-gritty of the regular portion of the season before we start getting into some more, well, let's just say competitive territory to put your name on the line. My name is Tigris. I'm here with Crumbs. Crumbs, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Tigris. Happy to have you here and be on your first play-by-play cast on League of Legends. That's great.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here covering Academy. I've been watching all of the action over the past few weeks, and it's been a lot of fun getting to see some faces that have been around the scene for quite some time, some other new ones that have been picked up from things like Scouting Grounds. And I would say, Crumbs, it's been a bit of a shakeup with some of the teams just kind of utterly dominating at the top, but quite the pool happening towards the middle of the standings pack.
I like that when we have a really dominant top of the table, because it's not just one team. We've got two. It's Cloud9 and Team Liquid that are 7-0, 6-1, which is really good. And then the bottom, rather the middle, has been pretty thrilling as well. The fact that a team like Immortals just last year was really not making the rounds, and now it's looking really pretty good. Like they could take some games, maybe if they go into a series from the top teams, is a really positive sign for the league overall.
And even looking at this game that kicked off yesterday between Dignitas and Immortals, where there are high hopes for teams like Immortals that have that roster that we've been tracking, getting a chance to see them in the lock-in tournament earlier and rely on that macro. But Dignitas absolutely dismantled them yesterday, showing how tight things can really get here in the middle of the pack. Unlike teams like Team Liquid that you see on your screen now, still completely undefeated and have been such a force to reckon with.
TL was just too good here, and CLG really struggling. I think this season they're trying to figure out what's going on with their roster, but they were trying to get something from the Renekton Nidalee combination. It's been doing so well. Renekton won every game with the exception of that one of CLG against Team Liquid, and you see why. He's just so dominant, and it's so easy to then start comboing plays with him. And well, now we're back to 100 Thieves, who's just hopefully slowly ramping up. This is a team that we always hype up because they seem to find talent out of nowhere. So seeing when they can put it together is always exciting, because you wonder, well, are these players going to move up, and then we're going to see more players that 100 Thieves have in store? Who else does 100 Thieves have cooking?
It also does feel like 100 Thieves are the team probably mentioned most by other players in their post-game interviews as, they may be a bit better than their record. We're not necessarily counting them out yet. And then TSM being another one of those teams, because you have so many known entities on this squad, those veteran voices that you have. You've got Babip coming from OCE after a tremendous performance, but still some younger names that we'd like to see develop over time, Sword. But sometimes maybe having a little bit of a struggle in the overall communication and game sense, but a lot of that individual talent that's been showing out.
Yeah, and that individual game sense, I think a big part of it has just come down to marking what the supports are doing. So much of the game now is just about these mega engaged supports, and so when they get these big team fights off, or these strong laning ganks, it's really difficult for the enemy team to do something about it. But when there's always somebody marking them, preventing these engages from happening, then you see how much easier these fights turn out to be. And you see teams like TL and Cloud9 really keep their eyes out for these engages. You see that even the Rel, they're down so much gold, 10,000, still able to find a really fat engage.
And we'll get to see a lot more action from these teams today. We are getting down to the wire, and we're kicking things off here with CLG versus Golden Guardians. And we got some TSM versus Immortals, Fly versus Cloud9, and then Team Liquid 100 Thieves. Should be a very interesting one before we round things out with EG versus Dignitas. Crumbs, any of these matches in particular that are jumping off the screen to you?
Yeah, third and fourth, FlyQuest, Cloud9, Team Liquid 100 Thieves. So it's both the 7-0 and 6-1 teams facing off against the ones that are in the middle of the pack. So if the teams at the top are able to take these wins, they would really solidify themselves at the top. I really don't think there's going to be a way that they're caught. Now, if the teams at the middle are able to take some wins off, say, Cloud9, you're suddenly looking at just one win difference. And so you can start to dethrone these top teams right now.
And those teams in the middle, like FlyQuest, when you see those moments in the early game that look very promising and then somewhat dismantled later on, it makes you think perhaps they can pull across a win to get them in a better spot in the standings. We did mention what our first game is going to be, though. It is CLG versus Golden Guardians. CLG Academy, as you mentioned, Crumbs, have suffered from the roster swaps that they've had to endure, some because of the needs from the LCS team, others waiting on people to come through. But in the end, they're still here trying to figure out exactly what their style is.
They have to figure it out, but they don't have much time left. And it's no secret that teams in the Academy League and LCS are really connected in who and what they're practicing, how well they're doing. And so the fact that CLG is struggling in both leagues is no secret here, and I think they're trying to find something with the draft is something that I really appreciate there. The Nidalee Renekton, the Nidalee Zoe, these are combinations that are fairly easy to execute. Same thing with the Nautilus and the Kaisa. It's just that now you're dealing with teams that have had that much more time to practice, and so the time that CLG has put in, it just doesn't match how much their opposition has already done.
And it does make sense for them to rely on some of these more straightforward comps when you do have a lot of the player changes. I mean, Katsuri that you see on the screen right now, not having been a part of any of the games that we saw prior. So, hey, if we're going to have to slot people in and try to get to know us as a team, we might as well put them on champions with which they are a bit more comfortable. And they did put up a fight in the earlier portion of this game against Team Liquid in trying to oppress the enemy jungler. But in the end, Team Liquid just had so much strength on their side to be able to shut them down, you know?
TL is getting so much from their academy roster practicing against the main squad of the LCS. So the fact that Jenkins now gets to practice laning against Alfari, you've got Isla learning from Core JJ, you can truly see that there's a lot happening down there. And obviously you also have to know that there's the new coach spawn, so there's a lot of things going on for the academy team.
Yeah, it's no surprise when the LCS roster and Academy rosters kind of mirror each other in their strategy and style. But if we're looking to the other side of this game over on Golden Guardians Academy, an interesting roster that they have brought together, a combination of some players that are looking to be developed, having Yunbi and Rose Thorn coming through from Scouting Grounds, but you do still have those veteran voices, whether it's Prismal that has been around for quite some time and trying to be a steady force here in the bot lane, or you look at someone like Tally, who has a lot of versatility with his past experience over in OCE, now bring it here to the squad.
And this game was really close there against TSM. I felt like they actually had a good shot here, a decent draft. It just happened that they got to a stage where TSM's team fighting was a bit too strong. Alistar got some really good flanks, and now they're down here trying to defend the Baron, but it's already so late. The game was fairly even up until the fight that happened right before the Baron, and once it got to that stage, it was really nothing that Golden Guardians could pull off.
Which always hurts a bit more when it comes down to kind of a single player. You do keep things pretty scrappy there in the early game, but perhaps something for them to walk away from and win some future games, being that we do still have that close standings coming through a lot of these teams. So a single win can really make the difference for a team like CLG, already down and out of it when it comes to the standings, but Golden Guardians still trying to bring themselves through. Between these two rosters, though, Crumbs, is there anyone that you've got your eyes particularly on?
I'm always looking at Pobelter. To me, he sticks out like a sore thumb in these rosters, so I want to see how he does every time. It's just no matter where he's at, he's playing in the academy. I know he's won championships before, so how does he continue to fare here?
Yeah, we'll have to find out. We're going to be hopping into Champ Select for this first game between CLG and Golden Guardians. One of their last stands, because next week there's actually only one day of games that's currently playing, depending on how tiebreakers and things end up rounding out here today. But right off the bat, we've got an Azir band and Seraphine as well. First brought through into Academy by Cloud9, but has been making waves around the bot lane.
Yeah, you got to get rid of that champion. The long range engage is too crazy, and the combo with the slows is just so hard to keep track of, especially in a team fight. To know that you're a fraction slowed, and now suddenly this thing turns from a root to from a slow to a root, and then there's the ultimate to keep track of on top of her very large AoEs. I'm glad the Golden Guardians is banning it, and that more teams are realizing the power of Seraphine right now because of her flexibility as well. It just makes her that much stronger of a pick.
That flexibility, what she brings to the team fights later. Rel also taken off the table, has been making it through a lot of banning phases, with engaged supports being such a popular pick right now. But nonetheless, when Kai'Sa ain't banned away, she is likely to get that first lock-in. You can't get safer than that when it comes to an ADC.
Yeah, you can take that Kai'Sa away. You can also combo a dive composition here if they want. So CLG giving themselves a lot of options. Like they played the Nautilus Kai'Sa last game, so they might be looking for that again if they liked how the bottom lane fared. But if Golden Guardians wants to do something about it, Xayah has been pretty good. She goes really crazy in the late game still, and she will be a good response to any dive that CLG might want to play. So right now, CLG is saying, we could go dive. Well, now you're going dive against the Xayah. Not a very easy champion to try to go dive against. And in 11.3, it's going to be an Olaf pick. He's a lot weaker, but still Olaf.
Yeah, they did make changes to him in 11.3 that affect a lot of his clear and just strengthen the jungle, but still seems to be a popular pick among a lot of these teams. Just a bit more reliant maybe on going and trying to get the ganks to get that power and rolling in early, but still extremely effective with his kit and being able to sustain and keep himself around. So you do know who the ADCs on both sides are, both going to try and play it safe with some potential engaged support kind of lined up with them to be able to make plays or at least defend upon any dives. But it's the blind Orianna that's getting locked in here on the side of CLG Academy.
Yeah, Blind Dory, it's a thing that they typically pick for Pobelter. They just want to allow him to power farm, to be very strong and relevant, and be very self-sustainable. So this is the pick that if you don't really want to combo with anybody else, just leave me alone and let me farm. I will carry. Orianna is the one you go after. And the more I think about this Olaf pick, Tigers, I don't think we've seen Olaf pick on 11.3 thus far, at least I have not yet. So I don't know how strong he's actually going to be here, because a lot of the damage that he gets from his lower HP, that he gets from his passive, was diminished. So that's a big deal of Olaf's skirmish. And so in a matchup like Graves, that wasn't already an easy one, this could be a good chance for CLG to have a positive mid 2v2 matchup.
Because when you're thinking about the fact that the base health decrease in the way it affects the clearing, and Graves, on the other hand, another aggressive jungler, I believe that Keel has a lot of strength on him as well. So if they try and bring that power to the mid lane, when you know that the TF is going to be on the side of GG Academy to make some plays here, it's also going to open up the map on the side of GG when you have ultimates like TFs available to really be able to affect the rest of the lanes.
And TF really wants to be paired up with the Olaf, but they're not the easiest champions to already go up against. Every time you have a Twisted Fate, I'm looking at how are you going to find these picks, and Graves isn't the easiest to pick off. You usually want to see him use the quick draw level 6. It gets a lot harder because of his mobility, and it's not like Olaf is a particularly great champion at finding somebody in the middle of the jungle, know things to get over the wall. So Orianna is a really good target here, but nobody else really stands out as a very easy target for Yunbi to go after.
As far as the rest of the bans to come through, Karma did get a little bit of a buff in this patch as well. One of the reasons you might be seeing teams kind of putting their eyes towards her. The Leona and Alistar have been taken away, as well as the Rakan. So a lot of times in these cases, when so many engaged supports are taken off the table, that's why we're seeing a lot more Nautilus. He doesn't always make it onto the ban block, but does pair well with these ADCs. So somebody for you to keep your eyes on as we get the final lock-ins here on both sides. There it is.
There's Nautilus denied. Pretty useful to go with the Olaf. Olaf loves to see somebody with a Nautilus ultimate, because then you can just chuck your ultimate, run straight at them. You know exactly where they're going to be. You can just rain hell down on them. So it's really good with Olaf. It can be quite strong with the Twisted Fate if CLG doesn't have a way to, say, disengage. So there's still picks like Gragas in the top lane that could be really annoying to punt back anybody that's trying to engage onto you. So we'll see what they go after, though. It is going to be Galio in the support role against Nautilus, so very engage heavy bot lane. This is going to be a matter of when hooks or taunts gets traded, whichever jungler is down there, whichever mid lane has ultimate or the teleport to get down to the bottom lane, is going to just rack up some kills, because these supports don't just engage and back off. They really like to trade and go for the kill.
And both of these teams are just waiting to lock in their top laner. CLG Academy having to do so. They go for the Gnar, try to have somebody that can poke down and apply that pressure in lane. And then GG Academy now get to decide exactly what they want to go into this in the top lane. But as you said, Crumbs, we should have a lot of engages happening here on the bot side, especially if these junglers decide to be aggressive and play towards the strengths down in that lane. It could be a wild ride here in the early game.
Okay, I like this Gangplank pick because we're getting a lot of globals now. The Golden Guardians isn't necessarily the strongest team fight here, but they have a really strong way to fight right the second they have a numbers advantage with the Twisted Fate, Gangplank, and Nautilus. They can pull the trigger on a fight very quickly, and we've seen how well Alfari can lane with Gangplank against pretty much any matchup. So I think every top laner is taking inspiration from him and is trying to get the most out of GP right now. If Tally has learned a few things from him and can get a strong laning advantage against TN and just dominate that laning phase, Golden Guardians can actually be in a really strong position to just run over the game from the pressure they can generate in the side lanes and then combo it with TF.
Yeah, if you're effective on the Gangplank going into this, then laning against the Gragas just becomes a lot less dangerous, not just because you have things like a little bit of sustain, but the movement speed that you can get when popping the barrels, just having ways to escape, especially if dives come through. Then we'll be looking to Tally to see what he brings there. Somebody who has been very versatile and a strong force for the side of GG Academy when they're looking towards that veteran voice. But it's time for us to get into game 1 of the day here in Academy Week 4, Day 2, Crumbs. I am so excited to get the action going.
Yes, Academy is heating up. We are nearing playoffs very soon, and always that is a time where the pressure increases, and so the gameplay becomes that much more refined. So we want to see how quickly these teams can adapt, because it might be a year of increased pressure, but we have heard from many pros they actually just enjoy the change. It's just a change in the way that the scheduling and the way they've been living their lives according to the times at which they play has shifted, and that's just refreshing no matter how much more difficult it may be.
It is pretty crazy. I mean, looking week to week in Academy and thinking, oh, we're only a few weeks in, and then now we're here in week 4, and oh my, a few weeks in means towards the end and entering that playoff territory. So you do see a bit of those adjustments made by the teams. But as far as what we're seeing right here at the start for CLG, looks like he will be starting down towards his red buff, with Golden Guardians Academy also sticking down to the spot side, so bringing that pressure up towards that top scuttle later on.
Okay, and speaking of the top side, look at Gangplank. Not gonna wait for Gnar to check into the rush, but still fighting so much for that lane dominance, and both junglers finishing into the top side. You can almost predict that there's gonna be a lot of action happening in the top side of the map, so both want to clear, power clear usually, and then end the top side, which will just have them both meeting at the same time. Although Keel already doing this Raptors, kind of telling us that he's not going to be going for the Krugs afterwards, that he'll go to the blue side and try to make it to the top side before the Olaf.
If he can get there first and try to get and gank effectively before Rosethorn applies his own pressure, then that may be a way to try and snowball that lane to get them a bit ahead and give Tien a bit more comfort in this laning phase. One of the players that did come from OCE, Katsuri, recently joining, they were previous teammates, so in terms of looking at that synergy and both of these teams working on that overall communication and getting their macro online, it does help to have pieces like that all bring together here on the roster to put that into full effect. But this is the poking that you're going to see back and forth between these top laners to try to create the advantages, and some of the spacing for the CS, as Talia has already done pretty effectively.
And Tien would love to keep the wave here fighting against the Gangplank. Well, Gangplank would just want to push this as quickly as possible, because otherwise he's going to be in range to get ganked. So the Gnar backs off, and the Gangplank is able to continue to move this wave just a little bit forward. That way he can reset and then recall as he's already out of potions. With both junglers ending in the top side, though, they will be fighting for the Scuttle Crab. So the priority that these lanes have fought for will now dictate who has the advantage in this frog fight.
And it is that Scuttle on the top side that Keel has rotated on towards. Moments ago, Pobilt had this lined up, and Keel actually going in for the attempted gank, see if they can get some sums off of Yunbi, who does pop the potion, so the poke won't be enough. But Hooks is around here on the sideline if he can make something happen, but it's already been called out by the enemy that the rotation has occurred, so Yunbi finds himself nice and safe away, but does have to back with such low HP.
And look at the Graves pathing actually allowed him to get the top crabs because he didn't do the Krugs. He got there faster and then went across mid lane, but they might just dive Tien here. Here's Olaf. Whoa!
Oh! Yeah, there's no way you make it out of this one, Tien. The flash comes in from Rosethorn as an attempt, and the Mega Gnar at the very last minute. But that kill goes into the pocket of Rosethorn, assist rewarded to Tally. And when they were that low, this is where Rosethorn was rewarded for his pathing towards his top side, while Graves has put his attention elsewhere.
I respect that, going for the outplay. He had no way out. He knew he needed to try to make something happen. If he traded that 1-for-1, it would have been sick. And he doesn't actually miss that much because he gets the CS here off that teleport. And meanwhile, the Graves is able to get a lot of farm on the blue side of the map. So let's see how this dive went now, because they know that they have to go onto Gnar, but there's no wave. So Rosethorn saying, screw it. I'm not going to wait for this. Just one more auto. Boomerang might have done it, maybe auto boomerang, but it was very close at the end. So I like that he tried to go for that, because when else do you go for these kind of outplays other than in Academy?
Yeah, that's where you got to do it, to try and get that resolve under you so you can make those bold plays later on whatever stage it might be. And it's great to find those advantages elsewhere because, I mean, down in the bot lane, things have been rolling around pretty evenly. I mean, even when Keel made his rotation down here, it was to clear out that bot red side jungle instead. Oh, but here's the play. That's a kill onto Chime. Bye-bye. Katsuri low, but still alive, and Prismal left all in his lonesome with Keel standing directly on top of this ward, so there is some safety to prevent the second death.
Yeah, it looked like either hook or taunt. Something started that fight and instantly one went down. So you probably have Chime getting engaged on right away and not able to proc that aftershock, and then you don't have enough damage to survive. So it's a big deal there who gets to jump on each other so that the aftershock does not get proc. So we'll see how it plays out there, since CLG doesn't have a hook. Yep. Right, so uses the aftershock right away while there is no one attacking him, and there wasn't enough follow-up on the Kai'Sa, so when Hooks taunts him, his aftershock is down, turns very squishy, and Kai'Sa with the HP, percent damage, as well as Halo Blades will just shred through a Nautilus.
That's one of the difficulties of the type of engage that Nautilus goes for at this stage too. Once you throw out that dredge anchor, then you're pretty much in it, and someone like Hooks that's carefully holding on to that taunt so that he can counter effectively, then hey, you're going to be dead after that. There were some sums that were blown there too, Katsuri using both the heal and the flash, and then Chime also attempting to get some kind of trade back with the ignite and the flash on his own. No heal for Prismal. So a little bit of a note over to the junglers should they try to make a play. And Rosethorn has officially hit 6 at this point too, slightly ahead of Keel.
All right, he's 6, but so is Tally and Yunbi, and now it's the time to see what can this Golden Guardians roster do with these globals, because that fight in the bot lane should not go that way anymore. You should have support from these global abilities anytime that happens again, and if not, then are you making a play into the top side, maybe diving to Gnar or pairing up with Rosethorn to go after the Graves? They need to make value out of Twisted Fate, who already has Lucidity Boots, so trying to maximize how many ultimates he can get in the early game.
And with this Drake up right now, the scuttle over in favor of CLG. You can see the bot lane kind of rotating through there to attempt to either get a pick or just set up for that should a play come. It is fairly early for anyone to be going for it, but you want to know where those junglers are. Oh, Pobelter ends up getting exhausted here in the trade as Yunbi once again chunked fairly low. Pobelter has been effectively pushing this wave to get the CS lead in his favor, but they've also been doing their good old trading that you expect from the mages down mid.
They both have to reset as well, so they'll just both be away off the map, and TF will actually be off first, and if Pobelter goes straight to the lane, then TF can get an advantage there using that ultimate. He does have the TP though on the Orianna. A hook goes wide, and watch for Twisted Fate to surprise CLG here. CLG doesn't have very good wards to position Orianna, whereas TF can just show up anywhere.
Not going to be able to grab that one. An effort of using the ultimate in the end on Keel, but I like the fact that CLG, after you end up getting Hooks not being able to make anything happen there, they knew they were outnumbered. There's no reason to go in and give too many resources with that singular early Drake. So time to get yourselves back to lane, mid laners included, and make plays elsewhere.
Yeah, but you still have that Twisted Fate ultimate, so we really got to see that ultimate be used right now. Level 7, and we have yet to see it be used, and part of it involves combining your time where you have freedom to move around in your lane with Olaf's clearing. So it can happen where, okay, you just shove the lane, but now Olaf has a full side that he wants to clear. And then Olaf just clears it, okay, but now I have to go into the lane. And this is the kind of desync that can often happen where you end up in a stalemate where you're not actually making anything happen, and oftentimes one of you just has to say, you know what, screw it, I will be the one to miss out on either the full clear or the wave. Let's just go after a play, we get more this way, and someone has to make that first move.
It is one of those things where, I mean, the value of a TF ultimate is often what kind of threatens the enemy, and you want to get the most value, especially in those early ones, but the longer you go without it, it loses that. Here's an attempted axe onto Keel, who flashes over the wall to get into the turret safety. There are 3 on the side of Golden Guardians that are wrapped around this top side, but the majority of the rest of the team for CLG are here should there be an attempted engage. CLG Hooks making that face at him so they can start to get some damage down onto this Rift Herald, almost baiting any engage that could potentially come from GG Academy.
It's questionable if Yunbi had the gold card out on time, they would have been able to kill Keel. Still had the flash, and Olaf wasn't very close. Maybe if he flashed forward and used all his combo, might have been able to burst down the Graves, but TF isn't the highest damage, doesn't even have the ignite on that kill, so I think it was fine to let him get away here. And they know that the Xayah is not there and that the Kai'Sa was Mia as well, so they didn't feel comfortable starting this Rift Herald, but they will do so now that they have bought some more time, and more importantly, now that Gangplank and Twisted Fate have pushed out their lanes.
And both Hooks and Chimes been hovering around this area for quite some time to attempt to make a play. You see the Winds of War just coming out for some poke, and there's the flash in. Hooks tries to get it, unstoppable, and stop. Rose Thorn goes down. Chime tries to get a hook to get out of this safely, but ends up missing it on the wall, and Yunbi with the stun finds himself into the grave as well. 3 lost on the side of Golden Guardians Academy. CLG coming out on top and grabbing the Rift Herald for themselves.
Okay, that is complete disrespect on Golden Guardians' side, because their laners are still shoving, yet Golden Guardians' top and mid just leave, go off the map, and just show up into the fog of war. And so they are just still sticking around at the Rift Herald in sight, because there is a Scuttle Crab that was active when that fight happened. So I think Golden Guardians just needed to see, hey, our laners are shoving this out. The enemy is not responding to these waves and has gone off the map. They could still be here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. CLG hadn't backed off of that for some time, so there wasn't any indication that they would have went elsewhere. And after that fight, Pobelter now sitting at 2-0-1 with a CS lead, and CN getting stunned out and flash upon. Tally here alongside Yunbi to make the play in the top lane and attempt to get some of this pressure onto TN.
Very nice. There's no flash on the Gnar, so they found another target, and now there's still 2 more targets that they'll be able to go after with the Graves and the Gallias. So good to see that the Twisted Fate is still active on the map. They shouldn't be discouraged if they're losing these team fights, because their composition won't win this way.
Attempted long shot from Katsuri, but Prismal activating the ult. That's the nice safety that Xayah has built into lane should any ganks or trouble come her way. Unfortunate to have to use it, but the Rift Herald is here as well. We're still in that plate territory, so a prime time to get this, to get as much gold as possible, especially into those that you are hoping to be late game carries. So CLG Academy making the most of the objectives that they have secured.
And it's a great timing to go for this, because it's right after that Twisted Fate pour into the top side. So you know that Golden Guardians doesn't have enough members in the blue side to either defend the Herald or your move into the blue side for vision for the next Dragon fight. So CLG getting a lot out of that counter to that Twisted Fate port. And we'll see if Golden Guardians can actually group up and find something, but they don't have the Nautilus ultimate to start something, so they won't be as bold as they usually would be if they were to see a Graves in their jungle.
The taking down of that turret as well as the second charge are so well timed too, because it's 5 seconds on this Drake, so CLG Academy have no reason to try and escape this area without putting down some wards, without setting up to make sure that GG can't take advantages, but it's actually still going down here in the top lane. The ultimate raining down from Gangplank. He gets another shot with the parry onto the Gnar, and it's both that die. A trade for trade on both sides.
That's awesome. You love to see that. Yes, emotes post-mortem. I think Gangplank actually ends up winning that because his wave crashes and will deny a little bit of Gnar. But anyways, semantics. We're back to the bot lane, 4-on-4.
Hooked directly onto the Galio, but he's tanky to boot, tries to back off, flashes behind Keel to try and block some of this damage, but Katsuri is coming here over from the bot lane, gets a lot of shots onto Prismal, who narrowly survives with the delayed ultimate from the Gangplank, but ends up, or the Galio rather, who ends up getting immediately popped here upon his arrival. Pobelter is here with the shield onto Keel, but there's still so many low on the side of Golden Guardians Academy. Tip your hat off to him, Pobelter, making sure to deny, but it is the rotation over towards the Drake that will be the reward of this fight.
That is another one fight there from the side of Golden Guardians. They catch the Galio right away, and normally going after Galio is a big no-no. He'll easily turn onto you, but there was nobody next to him. Nobody was close enough to turn, so they're able to get a big chunk without losing much in return, and that really positions them to win the fight and now get a dragon. The gold is even, but they're starting to build that advantage in the dragon objectives and building some confidence in these fights that are continuing their way.
Even with the shields of Durand, I mean, Galio was not tanky enough to stick around. You look over on the side of Golden Guardians Academy, and they've just got their itemization up.
All right, let's see how this went out right away, because Tally already has the oranges down, and that's why Tian's thinking, yeah, I can take this fight, but it's that barrel at the end that allows Gangplank to actually win that. An auto from Gnar onto that barrel, he would have won that fight easily, but then here we see what's going on with the Galio. What happened here? Because he's going so low, right? Takes a bunch of damage. The taunt goes after the Olaf, but now he has to flash out. Now the Kais is by herself with ultimate from the Nautilus. So yeah, it's just the team wasn't there. The Orianna was following through the river, and you need her to be a little bit closer because ideally you want to use that taunt with your ultimate.
Oh, but right here in the top lane, we're getting the dive 3v1. The Gangplank a little too low, and Tally has been taken out. Tried his best to use the Cannon Barrage to deal as much damage and try and set up for Prismal and Rosethorn that are here alongside Chime, just to make sure this doesn't get completely out of hand in the top lane.
You appreciate the Gangplank that can get the ultimate out at the last minute just to clear the wave, to make sure that you can slow the enemy down if your team is close enough to chase. And they actually are close enough to be able to take down this turret in response. So Golden Guardians will actually win out the objective game from that. If they can keep somebody up here to defend their own turret once CLG counter pushes, then they'll actually have won at the end of that play when you count what their bot lane did in response.
It's one of the strengths that Gangplank adds to a composition where it's not necessarily that he has to get the kill, but even that outgoing damage upon his death that he can do to set up the team, like you said, get in this position to try and take that turret as well, offers an advantage over to Golden Guardians there. But everybody's starting to group here. There's the Engage attempted to throw out the ball to get a lot of damage onto Prismal, but it's not enough for GG to go ahead and take the bait, still safely on their side to have to disengage if needed.
Fast fingers there on Prismal, using the ultimate to get away from that shockwave. Otherwise, he would have certainly been dead. So making sure that you've got that fast reaction time is crucial to picking a champion like Xayah, because you do look like a fool if you end up dying as that champion without using your ultimate. So seeing Prismal do that right there is a good sign, as Golden Guardians is starting to find their way back up the rankings, and a win here would certainly give them a boost of confidence. At 3 and 5 is started to climb up there to the middle of the pack.
So many other teams being similar in those standings too. It could mean not just boosting up your own morale, but boosting up your position when it comes to play off territory. And that is the thing that comes with Xayah having the safety of the ultimate. We had seen before that CLG had taken advantage of knowing when that ultimate wasn't there to try and push for objectives, because you know there's just not much that GG would be able to do in that scenario. But in a case like that, you really don't lose anything for activating it, since it does keep you alive. You're not near any of these major objectives. There's still anywhere from 115 to 150 on either Drake or Baron at this point, and a turret down on both sides with one in favor of GG because what they were able to do to eventually push out there in the bot lane. But it looks like a potential setup coming here towards the mid to try and get priority for when that Drake does eventually come around.
Yeah, this is Golden Guardians really aiming for that Dragon Soul win condition, but they're really struggling to clear this. They don't have a lot of poke. You know, I'm interested to see what Yunbi is going to be doing with this build, because this is not a high damage Twisted Fate build. It is Shirelia's Reverie into Rapid Fire Cannon and maybe Hourglass, so really not a lot of damage here. They're relying on combined crowd control, because you're not getting enough value out of the Reverie if you don't have enough members auto-attacking the targets that you are amplifying their damage with their auto-attack. So I really need to see what this TF's got in store, because otherwise his damage could have been more useful with other itemizations.
Especially when you compare that to what CLG are building into. Now dropping that Herald to finish off that mid turret, a hook just over to the right, so not going to land for Chime. We do have the TP coming in here directly in the mid lane to try and go for something. Belter is here and has arrived, but it's just the wave clear for now as the rotations towards Drake do begin. Hooks is ready to try and initiate some kind of engage. There's a hook directly onto Belter, but he flashes and ends up getting the stun directly out of range. The barrage to come down and deal some damage. Unstoppable, the Olaf goes as he flashes out of the way. Tien is here for the party, but no one has fallen just yet. Just a little bit of poke. And Chime brings himself out of the damage range of the members of CLG, who are attempting to poke down as much as possible, as it is Golden Guardians that have been really prioritizing these Drakes, pulling it out of the pit to bring it out of range in CLG as much as they possibly can, as there is now a direct divide among this river line, except for the Graves here in the back. Here you go. Are they going to try and go for another engage? Katsuri gets a lot of damage on. Prismal ends up ulting to get himself out of this, and Chime activating and going golden as soon as he ults into this. It's a double kill for the Gnar. Can he follow up even more? But he's too low on HP. Katsuri ulting into the back line to get the finish off onto another member of GG, and it is a slaying onto Katsuri. If Tally can finish it off, Tally effective with that blow. Belter and Hooks here in pursuit, but it's CLG that walks away with the Drake, and any additional kill to try to get the ace is just an A-OK cherry on top of that cake that they just ate up.
That is a scary gangplank. You don't want to go up to him. He can one-shot Belter with a barrel there. But the key thing here, CLG still has major ultimates. You still have Orianna, Shockwave, and Gnar. He flashed out in mini form, so when he sees 4 people clumped up against, lo and behold, mountain terrain, he's got a perfect place to combo that ultimate. And so Golden Guardians, without the Olaf ultimate, without the Nautilus ultimate, only Xayah as a defensive tool, they've got nothing to follow through. It's a really nice, valiant effort out of Prismal, hoping to get a crit there, but not able to get the job done. They're trying to be a hero, but the fight was already lost. They were in such a terrible position before it started, and it's one of those moments where you lose that initial fight and you have to ask yourself if you still have the tools to actually take down the opponent when they have so much remaining. I think they should have pulled out, but hey, that'll be something for their VOD to go over if they felt like they couldn't do it.
And now at this point in time, CLG with a slight gold lead. They've got to 1K now. They do have the Dragon to stop that stacking on the side of Golden Guardians, because it gets extremely dangerous once you get into that soul point territory. But it's the attempted push here. The TF ultimate into the backline. The OA takes a lot of damage from the Graves and knock up onto the enemies of GG. They'll still keep continuing to pressure. Great ultimate from the Gangplank to keep everybody on CLGFA. But the Gnar comes into the backline. He gets a stun onto 2, setting up the double kill for Katsuri to be able to follow up, and Rose, Thorn, and Prismal, tail between their legs, try to high it up this mid lane with the pursuit of CLG. A great way for them to follow up onto that attempted push down mid.
I mean, they wanted to die, but I don't think they really believed that they could die, because that was not a very wholehearted attempt from Golden Guardians. Twisted Fate ports on the side, but the gold card doesn't even go into the Galio. He actually gets distracted by the Graves, doesn't stun him, so Galio gets a big taunt off. It's able to proc the aftershock, live through all that, and then CLG is able to turn. It just so happened that Tien is coming down from the bot lane in Mega Gnar, none other, and can hop over the wall and get another very nice Gnar ultimate to get even more kills for CLG.
And suddenly, what was seeming fairly even keeled on both sides as far as the carries trying to get to a point to fight is now really in the favor of CLG. Even when things were even, we noted the fact that, yes, the AD carries are already positioning themselves to be powerhouses in the late game, but if you compare the mid laners, Pobelter has been indexing so much more into the ability power that he offers in these fights. And it's really shown an effect whenever they get engaged upon, and the half commitments to happen from the side of GG make it easier for CLG to try to make quick work of their attempts. And now with the Baron buff, it's just them trying to push down and take these objectives because there's not much that GG can do to safely keep them at bay.
Well, we need to see full commitments out of GG now. No more half commitments out of them, and they have an opportunity here because Tien doesn't have that teleport. Still barely available, so they have a little bit of time here. If they can use Twisted Fate to port behind the enemy, has that stopwatch, they just really have such little damage. It's hard to imagine that they can get onto the backline, get a member, and get out. It feels like they have an easier time hoping that CLG overextends one of their members like the Galio or the Gnar, and then you're able to pop them versus diving onto somebody that could be by themselves.
And so much of the burst that comes from CLG as we do get an engage from Tien to make sure that they take out Tally under this tower, even using the cannon barrage to ensure that you try to get some damage onto the members of CLG to get some kind of trade for the death that you're giving over. But in the end, it's CLG that continue to power down these lanes with the Baron buff onto these minions and just punishing the spread that they have forced over onto GG. Is Rumthorn could make something of this.
Oh, Jesus. All right. Okay. Pack it up. It's too disjointed. It's way too disjointed. Nautilus went in by himself when TF had already gone in. So TF had gone in by himself when they had gone in onto the gangplank. So nobody's following each other's calls. There's not enough coordination right now from Golden Guardians to actually take down CLG, who, without a coordinated effort from Golden Guardians, just needs to stay together, and then Golden Guardians won't be able to get the win back.
CLG just hurt so much right now, Crumbs. I mean, look at all the bounties on their head, and that's exacerbated by the fact that GG in these scenarios are looking a little clueless of where they should follow up on, and that disjointed nature that you mentioned is what left these openings for CLG in these fights to be able to dismantle them and get those back-to-back objectives that ended up taking the more even-keeled game and putting it directly into their favor. And on that, they've even got their wards aggressively over into the enemy jungle in favor of CLG, limiting the rotations of GG. You know that they're probably lurking over towards this top side just because of the general map awareness. And now Golden Guardians have to do more to try and create an advantage where they have lost them.
Well, they still have Twisted Fate with double teleports available with the Nautilus, so it's not double inhibitor just yet, and the gold lead is really not unsurmountable. 6,000 is a comeback we've seen many times before, so they just need to find these individuals by themselves. So even like the Gnar by himself, right, with the Twisted Fate, you can go after him, and it's only the Nautilus that's following him here, and they will back off and try to defend. But when you look to defend this base, you are giving CLG more opportunities to group up around the red side, and when they're grouped, that's less times where you can potentially pick them off.
And Tally has to be sent down towards bot to deal with the super minion, and does have the TP available, does have the ultimate as well. All TPs on the side of Golden Guardians, a single one on the side of CLG if Gnar does need to come to the party from a distance. As the majority of them are just going to keep focusing down on these towers, breaking down into the top lane and bringing them closer to infiltrating this base, as Golden Guardians will continue to have to defend a bit.
Oh no!
Oh, the ultimate used!
Oh, okay. What?
I feel like, Crumbs, we've seen this happen quite a few times over the past few minutes. An ultimate used, nothing to follow up, and CLG just go ahead and burn down the turret so they can get an engage of their own. We won't wait for you to try to use one of your ultimates. We have gotten multiple if needed, but all we have to do is focus on the objectives, because that's what's going to end up winning us the game from here on out. And this sends such a clear message to CLG that Golden Guardians aren't in a place where they feel confident to take any of these fights.
Yeah, I get the message. The R key works.
It
yes,
does.
It does work.
You got the speed switch. Easy activation. Tien ends up throwing back Tally, who flashes out to get above it, and Olaf puts himself into the middle of the fight to try and separate CLG from the rest of his team. But he's just going to get chunked down so low, has to flash out of the remaining damage that would be threatening to finish him off here. So while there are no deaths taken, it's a great chance for CLG to try to reset with 2 inhibitors down on the side of Golden Guardians Academy.
Yeah, they are very glad right now. They can just go straight to the Baron. They've got both side inhibitors pushing, so it's going to be really annoying for Golden Guardians to deal with this. And it'll be obvious what Golden Guardians can afford to do when you've got the Gangplank on the side lane. So he'll have to TP into the base or into some ward that Golden Guardians places really far back. So getting the Gangplank into this fight, if they even want to fight outside of the map, is going to be really tough for Golden Guardians. So as long as CLG knows that they're playing with vision advantage, it's so easy.
And CLG Academy feel totally okay with trying to just force Golden Guardians away from this Baron right off the bat. It is up. It's theirs for the taking should they try to get some kind of pick and engage onto Golden Guardians. And based on the previous performances, CLG are feeling fairly confident in doing so, even warded around here, despite some of the controls that have been placed down by Golden Guardians. But it's the majority of Golden Guardians are actually rotating over towards the mid side, and CLG are kind of just using this as a bar of scrimmage, so there's no way that Golden Guardians can try to surpass it without going for some kind of team fight. And you do see that the stun ends up getting onto Tien, but he's just going to build up that rage. The cannon barrage here into the back. The hook ends up getting onto a now golden Pobelter as CLG hooks takes down Rosethorn. Prismal here for the final burst to take one down in the trade. Pobelter no longer around for this fight, and Katsuri at about 50% HP ults back into the fight away from where Yunbi just got his ult into the backline, and Galio re-enters for the skirmish. Tien and everybody are in pursuit as Tally, as slow as you can go in this very moment. A stun onto Yunbi, a flash as a response, and heal with the peel to get the last hit onto this member of Golden Guardians, the only one surviving, who now is just going to TP into the base to match Tien, who's already there with his own TP to try and end this. Taking down one turret, that's another turret that he's going to be focusing on to now. Yunbi gets the stun, but can you burn him down enough with CLG and the rest of the team coming here to fight? The ult onto the enemy mid laner directly into the turret, and Rosethorn has spawned once more, gets taunted by the Galio, and with that, the ace is in favor of CLG. Final hits onto the Nexus, and they walk away with a win against Golden Guardians Academy.
Ooh, what a crazy end of game fight there from CLG. That was a really fun one when Nautilus immediately goes in trying to go after the Kaisa with the Olaf, and Gnar is just lingering in the side the whole time. I felt like Tien was a hero in so many of the fights for CLG, including that last one with some very key ultimates, or at least really distracting so many of the Golden Guardians members that they never felt like they could go in, or else were in danger of that big wombo once again, like they felt it at Dragon.
And it also just felt like CLG Academy at one point in the game, when they were able to secure that first Drake for themselves in the Baron, then they had more of an idea of where they were going to go from that point on, where Golden Guardians Academy lost some of their resolve. And when you don't have that mindset as a team to be cohesive and find ways, even in a defensive way, to keep them away when you know they're going to try and go for these team fights, then it's kind of lost in your head as far as where those advantages can truly come from.
Yeah, just needed to see more coordination out of Golden Guardians. You hate to see these ultimates not stacked on top of each other, because they do become stronger when they're used together. You're just using it lackadaisical with nobody else seemingly aware that these abilities are happening. Nobody can follow up. So we had a few moments like that that just added up to more and more failed opportunities to defend against CLG, and you only get so many of those per game. So they fumbled the ones that they had, and by the time that CLG realized, oh, they're not even engaging so well, we could just run after them, the game was already over.
So CLG Academy, the winners of this game, one of the teams that we came in with crucial eyes to see what they were going to make of these last games of the regular season, and they pulled out the victory. We are going to be going to a short break, but when we return, we have an interview with one of the winning players, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to LCS Academy Week 4, Day 2. We just witnessed CLG Academy taking the victory against Golden Guardians Academy, and now it is time for us to speak to one of the players, and that player is going to be the top laner, Tien. We just watched putting in the work on that top lane pick here with the Gnar. Tien, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you. It's finally nice to have a win on the board.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I just want to get first your general thoughts on how that game went, from the pressure that was being applied to you in the top lane during the laning phase to when you all came together for the team fights.
Laning phase felt a bit rough just because GP is a really strong laner, but when it came to team fights, like I was confident that like post laning phase I'm just gonna be like a better top laner anyways, because Gnar is a better side laner, better team fighter if you just like play properly. And also he was building like a glass cannon. GP can't really play against our comp. So I felt like confident throughout the whole game. I wasn't really nervous.
Nice. I mean, with all of that considered, another thing is the fact that with CLG, we're getting to see you in action over the past couple games, and there's been so many roster changes throughout. How has that affected the experience of you and the rest of your teammates as you're trying to power through the season?
I actually feel really bad for a lot of my teammates and like kind of thankful for the subs that played. Like we have gone through like 3 iterations of different teams. Just like for one, we're still using a sub jungler for once, and I think he's doing like a good job. Just like playing like just like he's just playing for us, which is like really nice. Like we had a mid laner change. We went from like RJS to Pobelter. Obviously top and AD carry have changed, so. It's definitely really awkward just to like get used to like different kinds of players, especially because I think like Katsuri is very different to Team Luke. I'm really different to Brandini in terms of how we play the game. So like it's a learning process, and I know that like as the split goes on, like we'll get to like where I expect us to be eventually.
Now, you mentioned the changing out of the AD carry position, and Katsuri has finally arrived here. How does the experience that you two have together play into the way that you're able to play as a team now?
Yeah, so Robin and I have played together in the Oceanic region for like 3 years or something like that, because we used to play like amateur. It's just how we play together, it always feels nice just to have like, I know an AD carry that will do damage like later in the game. That like in team fights, I know like he's just gonna perform, like he'll just do damage, and it's just like comfortable playing with an AD carry that like knows what I'm thinking as well.
It's always great to have some of that synergy built in, especially when, as you say, you're focusing on developing and trying to improve throughout the season. What is just the general vibe of this team and kind of goals going forward, especially now that you do have a few weeks under your belt and are still trying to settle in with a roster that you will be competing with pretty continuously?
So the general feel I have of this team right now is we just like to fight, honestly. Like we just opt into fights without really thinking too much. So going forward, I just want to like clean up our like decision making around fights and just how we move with like our early game leads. And after that, like it's just one step at a time. I'm not looking that far forward into the future. It's just solve the problems in front of you first, I guess.
One step at a time. Tien, thank you so much for joining us for the Verizon post-game interview, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Always so great to get to hear from the players directly after that. And I mean, focusing on the team fighting their crumbs, as we saw be so effective in the later portion of the games.
Yeah, his team fighting, I was always thinking like, man, what's he doing that these other Nars aren't doing? Because his opinion is a lot higher, and it really seems like the players that think really high of Nar are the ones that are able to do a lot more, and the ones that don't are the ones that are getting bodied in lane, never really get to see them do anything with the pick. So figures why you would see some favor him and others not.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you have the confidence to make the pick happen and it's working well in the meta, then you might as well go for it. But that is going to do it for our wrap of CLG Academy versus Golden Guardians Academy. When we return, we'll continue with the rest of our games scheduled for today, and we will see you there.